Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to wherever you are in the world. Welcome to RCI Friday's GT Sprint Challenge Round 4 at Misano World Circuit Marco Simoncelli. We have 1 hour of pure GT3 racing coming to you today. I'm your lead commentator for the first time ever, and alongside me in the booth, as always recently, is Jesse Lee. Welcome, Jesse.
Yes, hello, John, and it's an honor and a privilege to be here on the night that you make your very first lead commentary appearance. It came up this week as a sort of a would you like to, and I think that you absolutely nailed the start. Hello, everybody. We are at Misano, of course, and that could only mean one of two things. It's going to be a very interesting race. Out of every racetrack we go to, Mr. Dalton, Misano always seems to deliver, especially in the 1 hour format that we're going to have with us tonight.
Yeah, certainly so, Jesse. It's one of those very strange circuits that has a lot of flat curves and a lot of track limits to abuse. So we either find ourselves with a lot of drive-throughs, not very many drive-throughs, or an absolute mess of a start from everybody trying to jostle for position to take that inside curb. So yeah, super excited to see what's going to happen tonight. And big names in practice at the top as we expect, especially this man here, Hugo Merles, who we saw have an absolute miserable race out last time at Alton Park in the Ferrari, but seems to be back on form in practice with just over a minute and a half to go. Currently resides P2 in the table, not too far behind the 406 Bentley of Ivanov. Last time out, we did find ourselves at Alton Park, where Nora Rose took a dominant win in Pro from Joshua Allen of Balas Esports and Grantas Caracas. And with the top 3 Pro split now being separated by just 14 points, Jesse. It's getting super close at the top, and we're about halfway through the season.
I was going to bring that up, John. I absolutely love the championship battle that we have right now. Of course, if you go all the way back to right around P5 in the championship, they're all within 20-some points. That's all doable in a particular weekend. And of course, with the drop round, it benefits some, it's going to hurt some others. But really what it does for everybody is it keeps it really nice and close. We've got that to this point in the season. Oh my goodness. All last week did was make things incredibly tight. Tonight, I really do think, and I'm going to make a bold prediction, somebody is going to fall out of this championship race tonight by virtue of having a really bad race, I think.
Yeah, we've got some super competitive drivers at the top end of the field. Nora Rose, obviously last time victor at Alton Park. Joe McCauley needs no introduction. We all know who Joe McCauley is. And this man here, Joshua Allen, did try and stick it to Nora Rose last time out. So a lot of big competitive names in the top. It's going to make it very, very close, I feel. And I feel grid position is going to be key here tonight, Jesse.
Yeah, it sure is going to be more than almost any track we go to. Folks, qualifying, very important tonight. You don't want to be in the middle of the pack. It's hard to pass around here. It's even harder to pass cleanly around here. You're going to have people getting penalties. There's also going to be the pit strategy. Super duper important. That's a new technical term I'm going to use, I think, John. Super duper important to get good quali laps in here. I cannot tell you how stressful it's going to be to start from anywhere other than the front couple of rows.
Certainly so. It's going to be super duper important, Jesse, indeed, to get that grid position nailed in tonight and try and find some clean air and some track position, as we do have a fair few cars out here tonight on the grid. As we now flip over to the qualifying session, scrambling out of their pit boxes. 28 cars join us here tonight, and obviously that is going to be key in order to get a fast lap in. And Nora Rose, head of the queue tonight, first out the pit lane, followed by Savalainen, followed by Joshua Allen, followed by Ivanov, followed by Merles, followed by Rimbaud, followed by Megazi in the Ferrari. So these guys very, very eager to get underway. 10 minutes of qualifying here, and I'm going to ask you, Jesse, who's your money on for pole?
Oh, that's a good question. I was going to give it to Nora Rose, but Ivanov came in with a really quick lap. I think that's a threat, as we just saw one of the cars go off. I believe that was Juna Savalainen's AMG just flying off the race course. Doing it in qualifying will invalidate your lap, and that's bad enough. Doing it in the race, though, gets you one of those dreaded track limits warnings. likely going to see more than a handful drive-throughs tonight. But yeah, I would say it'd be between those two. I haven't quite seen some of the other cars keep up with them, so to speak. You gave me the pick of the litter. I'd probably take that 406.
Now 406 looking super strong in practice, and obviously the Bentley is, well, as we know, very good over the curbs. And obviously the curbs being super flat here at Misano is going to make it very good to be in tonight. But here we see Nora Rose coming in to the final sector. An ultimate corner, super easy to get wrong. Some lovely anti-cuts on the inside, so be very wary of them throughout your whole race. Get into the final turn here. Exit curb, very aggressive here at Misano, can cut down a few tyres as we ride on board for a lap with Rose. Into turn one, inside curbs, very flat here at Misano. You can really abuse them. You speed humps on the inside, see how much curve there Rose took on that section. Coming down here into two 90-degree right-handers, very tricky to get right, kind of curb dips away from you on the inside, and you've got to get it in and tucked over to the right-hand side to slingshot yourself through the left to give yourself the best run that you can down into the second sector, which is turn 8 officially on the numbers. And braking here, Honora using a lot of the curb on entry, not too much on the inside. Does upset the car a little bit sideways coming out of there, down towards turn 9 and 10 to two consecutive corners here. Again, very easy to get wrong. If you get your braking wrong, you can find yourself on the very far left of the circuit, but Rose not finding themselves there at all, tucking nicely into the inside and trying to maximize the corner exit. This whole section now, right up through 11 and 12 and into 13, is near enough flat out. In the wet can be very sketchy. It's definitely not flat out from experience. There's a little dab of the brakes here, dropping down 3 gears there for Rose, jumping over the curb onto the exit curb, standing hard on the anchors again for what is turn 14. Coming in to turn 15, as we said earlier, the anti-cuts on the inside, using all of the inside curb there, being very careful not to use too much exit curb to invalidate the lap, tipping it in nicely to the final corner, staying off those extra curbs on the outside, and Honora Rose crosses the line to take provisional pole with a 133.5. Savalainen crossing the line behind in the same window, 133.5 again for him, so going to be some very competitive times already drilling in, Jesse. It's going to be super interesting to see how this plays out.
Yeah, that's the other thing too. We didn't really talk about that. We talked about qualifying well and how important that is, and it absolutely is. We didn't talk about the other thing. It's always really close around here. You could lose a ton of time, but more than anything else, Misano always seems to balance out all of the different manufacturers very well. If you're slow in a straight line, you've got these brilliant sweeping corners and excellent braking zones. If you are straight or are fast in a straight line, rather, you're probably not as good in down into the braking zones, that it gives other people a chance. I don't know. It's one of those tracks. I don't know what to tell you. It works very well. Savalainen the quickest, that 33.552, leading the field. Grantas Caracas in the 19 Porsche, talking about the comparison I was just making, 13/100ths off of that time. Those cars could not be more different if they tried.
Yep, definitely. So a lot of different manufacturers here. We have 5 different makes in the top 5, which is great to see. Very competitive nature here. Misano, as you said, Jesse, does bring out the best in each and every car. You've got the long final sector, you know, where the grunty cars really come into it. You've got the kind of twisty first sector where the real corner handling cars come into it. As Savalainen there takes provisional pole with a 133.2. You hear Grantas Caracas getting held up ahead by, I believe, Joshua Allen potentially in the Barla's Esports BMW. No, beg your pardon, sorry. That is Batista ahead there, following him from the splitter cam of the Porsche. Right up behind him, Grantas Caracas being a very competitive driver. We did see Alton Park, he was on a real charge, does improve slightly up into P5 with a 133.4. So tumbling down the 33 times already. Joe McCauley and Savalainen only 0.2 away from cracking into the 32s. So it's going to be very interesting to see, as Max Payne here getting very close to the back of an R8 with some contact there. Max Payne abandoning the lap in the K-Pax Lamborghini, heading back to the pits to probably restart that attempt again. Something you want to be careful of, Jesse, is obviously tripping over your opponents. It's not something you want to do in qualifying, but definitely not something you want to be doing in the race.
28 cars here, John, isn't it? It's not the biggest track in the world, and you got to find space. Max Payne either misjudged it or the car in front of them slowed up, and Max was trying to give them, you know, the nod of, hey, I'm on a quicker lap than you. Maybe give me space, a little bit of contact there, but to no avail. Ruined the lap, and they had to abandon that. Unfortunately, they only got 4 minutes. That'll give them 2 timed laps if my math serves me well. But beyond that, it's going to be do or die for Max Payne, who is down in the bottom half of the 20s, now finds themselves out of that spot.
Xavier Rimbaud here in the Porsche coming through to cross the line on his flying lap. Does improve slightly up into P21 in the 54 Porsche. As Walter Ryan here in the 183 Aston Martin. We did see him getting a little bit competitive at Alton Park. We did see him holding his own against some of these slightly bigger names in the field. Down in P20 at the moment. Does jump himself up into P16 as Dario Barzaghi here improving to P9. Another strong contender from Alton Park. We did see him in a good fight with a few of the drivers towards the top end of the field. So another super competitive driver here. And the Porsche is very good at Misano because it does have that great drive off the corners. So going to be wanting to watch the Porsches kind of coming out of the slower turns and going into them as well. Obviously very good on the brakes. Ivanov here in the 406 Bentley, coming down the final straightaway into 11, 12 and 13 on his hot lap, looking to improve very high up towards the top end of the field, and led at one point in provisional practice. A lot of exit curb there, entry curb slightly upset in the Bentley, comes round towards the penultimate corner. Not taking as much kind of entry curb as we saw Rose taking, but keeping it very safe there on the curbs and track limits is Ivanov. Coming out of the last turn, has lost a little bit of time, not looking like he is going to improve here. He's P3. Avalainen in the Mercedes, number 200, our Finnish driver here, riding on board with the splitter cam through this very fast section. You've got to take a lot of curb there on the entry, and he does. A little bit too much maybe on the exit. Hopefully still keeps that lap valid. Joe McCauley in the Audi there moving over, saying I want nothing to do with this front end of the Mercedes in the rear of my Audi, using all of the track limits. This splitter cam is really a great angle to see just how much these drivers do push themselves around this circuit. And Savalainen comes across the line, goes P1 still with a 1:33.027. So we're nearly in the 32s, Jesse. It's getting there with a minute of qualifying to go. I think Savalainen's going to be the guy to do it.
Savalainen currently on the provisional pole, nearly a quarter of a second to Joe McCauley in second place. Ivanov and Rose third and fourth. You got Caracas, don't look away. Very close. Take a look at all of the times on the Delta. They're all very close to one another. Ben Keys will come across the line in the GTR. We have seen this car perform well here in the past, and it's looking not too bad for Keys as they go P11. Just want to go back to Ivanov for a second. Ivanov ran 2 laps. The first one would have been good enough for a provisional pole at the time. It would have been still a 10th off of what Savalainen has eventually ran. And after that, I just think the run off the final turn ruined that lap as well. Ivanov needs to get their head in the game, maybe go up there and challenge for a pole, as everybody is improving. Tomlinson Dennis, a 33.9 for them, gets them a nice improvement. And what about Honor Rose, the most dominant driver of the season so far, the only driver to have the pole position, fastest lap, and the race win? Been a mixed bag, and for Rose, it will be a 33.227, good enough for P2.
A new boy on the grid tonight. Some of you know him, Christoph Verstappen in the Bentley as always. Late sign up into the Friday Championships, and as always, if you do want to sign up, there is still space. Head over to racerci.com and get yourself signed up to what we have on here. So Verstappen, here he comes across the line, provisionally P16 at the moment, improves massively up into P5 with a 1:33.4. Excellent lap from Christoph there. That's what I expect to see Mr. Verstappen in this
I was just going to say that.
And speaking of where we expect to see people. Martin Lawrence here, also in a Bentley, currently residing in P20, comes into the penultimate corner. Hugo Merles ahead of him, wants to get this final corner very tidy. Looking like a good time about to come in from Martin Lawrence as he heads towards the line in the 171 Bentley. And a slight improvement there up to P15, but still not where I'd expect to see that guy.
Mark Bastida coming to the line, the 96 Quash Sim Racing car. We'll get P18 for the time being. A couple of cars still out there, and there they are done with qualifying. Albin Bouquet goes P9, sneaks inside the top 10. Results of qualifying confirmed. Savalainen on pole, a 33.027. Joe McCauley will start outside pole position. Honor Rose third. Ivanov Verstappen, your top five. Caracas, Allen, Merrill's, Bouquet, and Barzaghi, your top 10. Savalainen quickest in the first two sectors. Ivanov quickest in the third. Incredible. What can you make from that qualifying, John?
They certainly looking towards the top end of the field. Top five, we've got two Bentleys just inside there. So I wouldn't discount those guys. Two very capable drivers that we've seen in Bentleys time and time again. So certainly my eyes are going to be kept on Verstappen and Ivanov. But we know Rose does have superb pace off the grid. Went like an absolute stabbed rat last time out at Alton Park. And nobody, absolutely nobody could touch her. So good mixed bag of qualifying here. Lots of different marks in the top 10 or so. So eyes peeled on this one, Jesse. It's going to be a very interesting fight indeed.
Yeah, it sure is. John, we got some championship points. You're the lead comms tonight. Take us away.
Indeed, it is my turn to do this. So, heading up the championship, we have Joe McCauley with 127 points, followed by Honora Rose with 116 points. 3 points behind, we find Hugo Merles in P3, Francis Caracas with 106 in P4, Albin Bouquet in P5 with 105, so a point separating those. Big jump back to Joshua Allen in P6 with 89, Martin Lawrence with 84, 2 points behind him. Savalainen in P8 in the Mercedes, Ivanov in P9 with 78, and Ben Keys in the GTR in P10 with 71. GTR in the top 10, Jesse. Can you believe it?
Absolutely brilliant. I love it.
Heading down the field, we have Milton Tomlinson Dennis, longest British name in sim racing history, 63 points in P11. Daniel Riccatelli with 56 in P12. Matteo Benedetti in P13 with 49. We have 138 of Malho with 45. P15, we find Barzaghi with 44. Joint tied with Thomas Jack, also in P15 with 44. Slight jump back to Hladky with 41 points. Martin Grady, as some of you know, we know the penalty system last time out, in P18 with 38. Joint P19-20 is Bylan and Mazzola with 31 apiece. Coming down into P21, we have Nicholas Keller with 26. We have Atta with 24. Rudy Filmalter with 23. Grant Wilmot with 22. P25, we have the 276 with 20 points. Followed by Barnett with 19. 3 points behind, we have Rimbaud in the Porsche with 16. P28, we have Megazi in the NSX with 13 points, tied with a fellow Italian, De Leo, with 13 points in P29. And P30, we have Kurbanov with 12 points. And rounding up towards the back end of the grid, we have Bastida with 11 points in P31. And everybody else below him scores 0 at the moment. Anybody with a line, I believe, has signed out. So anyone from P36 down to P40. Remainders of the sign-ups here: Elliot Watts, Sam Smeets, and Anya Fryev in the 555.
Well, that is a lot of names. We've got 28 plus cars on the grid at Misano. I would consider this a fairly large grid, all things considered, and the hesitation from the drivers on the start might be quite a bit bigger than we normally would see, especially from the mid pack. There's some people in chat thinking the same thing is how I'm going to put that. Certainly hoping that the mid pack can keep it together. One of the tracks that we have the most restarts on, if we're completely honest, it's a track that has a very difficult turn 1, 2, and 3 complex, and turn 4 is no picnic either. I was talking to the stewards prior to today's race. They are prepared to inform of a restart if one is necessary. Normally speaking, a restart is only required if the majority of the field get involved in an incident, or there's an incident far enough in the field that affects the majority of the field. Hopefully, we don't have that happen tonight. We have had, though, in recent memory, a lot of really nice, tight, close, and clean fights here up at the front. This race always comes down to it in the last. I'm not sure why. We always have just been lucky like that. Look out for the drive-through penalties. John, it's an hour race. It's likely, though, going to feel a bit longer than that.
Yeah, it's going to be a slightly grueling race, I feel, for these drivers, especially if they're going to be picking up track limits warnings in the first couple of laps. It's going to be a race of attrition, I would say, more than anything today. It's going to be all about getting that clean start. Like you say, Jesse, sector 1 of Misano is constantly switching back on itself. You know, the inside becomes the outside, becomes the inside, then becomes the inside again for 2 more corners, and then becomes the outside again before we head down into sector 2. So it's going to be very, very interesting to see how these guys cope. We know each one of these guys from previous events is very good at what they do. They are very respectful between one another, but we all know how elbows out racing goes here at Misano. And like you said, Jesse, it is one of the most restarted rounds that we do have in our calendar. So fingers crossed, no restarts tonight. And back at the snake of cars here from Savalainen's rear wing to see what everybody can get up to in this race. And it's going to be a good one, Jesse. I'm very excited for this.
Yeah, I am too. I'm quite curious what Savalainen's going to do off the line. Savalainen has had I was going to call it a love-hate relationship with Misano. That's not true. It's a hate-hate relationship. This track has never been good to Salvo, ever. I can't recall a single race he's ever had here in RCI competition where it's not gone wrong. I hope I'm not jinxing him. Normally when I say somebody usually has issues, they end up not having issues, so I hope I'm reverse cursing him for tonight. It just struggle for Savalainen here. He's been leading races coming into the final lap of the race and had issues, a drive-through penalty late into a race once when he was leading. The list goes on. If I was Salvo, I'd be having nightmares, quite honestly. But this track does lend itself to switchbacks in the first couple of turns. You might see Mr. McCauley making a move here, and Rose has won this race before in the past in the Diamond Drive. There's a lot of capable drivers inside that top 5.
Yep, certainly so. It's going to be very exciting to see what kind of moves they can pull. Can they get their cars off the line in a fast enough manner to draw alongside each other, or will we see kind of a single file train that could be so famously from Alton Park carried over? Everybody at the front of the grid has definitely got the potential in them to win tonight. Just a case of who will be winning tonight as the cars go into double file, around the penultimate corner towards the pit lane entry. Again, another tricky point of this circuit. Pit speed limit board is just around a blind Armco corner. So again, watch your speed limiter on the entry. Of course, mandatory pit stop as always tonight with a 25-second minimum timer, I believe. Head towards the gantry now. We wait, hold, we wait for 70 kilometers, and green comes up. Already a couple of drive-throughs coming up on the board, but we'll ignore those for now. As a run down into turn 1, we've got Savalainen on the inside. We've got elbows out here. I believe that's Ivanov possibly alongside Rose behind. Joe McCauley has made to made a breakthrough from the double file down into turn 2 and 3. Looks relatively clean. I'm not seeing any cars out of position on the track map just yet, but everybody's going to be bunching up now for these two 90-degree right-handers. And can everybody get through cleanly? We don't want to be seeing any kind of spin or accident, cars out of sync. See a few cars go wide there. Be careful of the speed humps, obviously on your low pressure tires. Could cause some damage to them. Very hot tonight. 30 degrees air and track on the Italian summer. Heading down into the hairpin now towards sector 2. A lot of cars still side by side. We've got some nearly 3 wide in the mid-pack here, Jesse. This is fabulous stuff from these boys.
I'm pretty sure Alan was in the grass coming onto the short chute and very nearly had a collision going 3 wide, and they somehow made that work. A lot of cooperation, maybe some fender bending, as well as the Porsche here of Barzaghi doing a little bit of defending. That's going to stack up the field just a little bit. Bouquet trying to get through, and that's going to completely ruin the corner for this man, Ben Keys, who now finds himself on the defensive foot as one of the cars behind him tries to get back through. That was a very nice and orderly start, considering they were 3 wide, 3 to 4 rows deep. And just as I say that, commentators curse off the last corner. Martin Lawrence gets span around. Another car involved was at Grand Willamont. Time will certainly tell.
It looked like Lawrence was a little bit slow coming off the corner, had to check up for a car ahead, and obviously just ran into the back of what looked like a Porsche. And obviously the commentator's curse strikes with a hot iron, Jesse, as we did think lap 1
Can't
was
believe that happened.
Maybe a little bit too clean, but there we go. End of lap 1. There's the accident we were probably waiting for, as Joshua Allen there out past the speed humps in the Barless Esports M4. We're going 3 wide again, nearly down into the back section of the hairpin. We've got Christopher Streppen on the inside. We've got Joshua Allen on the outside. We've got Hugo Merles in the Ferrari even trying to get involved in this. Obviously high up in the championship at the moment as Hugo wants to recover from a horrible Alton Park round. So trying to really mix it in and get past this rolling roadblock that is Verstappen. As we flick back to a replay here, what are we looking at here? We're looking at Honora Rose and Ivanov into turn 1. Gets very touchy. Rose getting ran into the back of by Ivanov. Ivanov slowing up, and that's what's allowed this kind of concertina effect of everybody getting on the back of him. And now we're in this kind of Alton Park train, Jesse, and it's getting very tight into the hairpin in towards the penultimate corner. Looking back from Grantas Caracas now, who's capitalized from all of this. His Porsche is now up into P3. Heading into the last corner, we see Ivanov there taking a lot of inside curb, a lot of outside curb, but they're all still single file heading down into turn 1. Looking back to Thomas Jack here, coming under fire from, I believe, one of the Porsches, Barzaghi there in the number 2. Again, a driver we saw with a great showing at Alton Park. I believe he did take tyres from memory serves correct, and got up a really defensive fight in the last half of the race. So now's his time to turn that attack, that defense switch, sorry, to attack. We fly back to a replay here. A Ghazi here into turn 3, I believe. Everybody bunching up there. Doors being banged. Again, opening lap, possibly Rudy Philmolter there in the green Audi at the back towards the end there. We just saw. No, very chaotic opening few laps, and I don't think it's over yet, Jesse.
No, it's sure not. A couple of things that we did not see on the cameras, but I saw out of the window. Richard Billen has received a drive-through penalty that can only be for track limits. There was a car that started 27th that also had a drive-through penalty. That was for starting out of position on the initial start. And Ben Keys, who was in 11th place, got spat out of the middle in turn 4. And I don't know if the 904 made it to the wall, but nevertheless, that car has went to the garage for the time being. Rather unfortunate. I saw that car spear off into the distance. Don't know exactly what happened, and this is at the end of lap 1. You see the cars crashing in the background, but turn 1 and 2, an excellent place to get a pass done. We saw it not go right for Ivanov. Ivanov let off to let Honor back through, and it obviously, I think something's wrong with Honor's car now. That was a significant impact. The closing speeds, mentioned that briefly, they're very different depending on what car you're in. Some cars brake quite a bit later than others, and at a track like this, that can absolutely get you into trouble, and it did do in that particular occasion. Joe McCauley, second place in the 123, but is the quickest car on the racetrack. Speed Juice fastest lap 2. The 123 Audi of Joe McCauley, 6/10 behind Savalainen, and you saw Christoph Verstappen come into the pit lane. That is the scheduled stop for the 747, and that will be job done for them as long as they do not speed coming back onto the racetrack. Keep an eye on the 747. We're going to come out today.
So 747, we know Christoph Verstappen from previous leagues has made big moves before. He was our Asia Masters champion a couple of months back, if you do remember that, if you were watching from RCI TV on Mondays. And speaking of watching, here we see Milton Tomlinson Dennis going up the inside of, I believe, Marlowe in the 720S. Both cars getting very sideways with the mid-engine platform. Can be very easy to upset them in these faster corners where you've got to just kind of dab on the brake and chuck it in and pray it sticks. Over-rotated a few 720Ss in my time. But speaking of not over-rotating, here is Ivanov on the back of Grantas Caracas. We see there the Bentley much stronger on corner entry, but then Porsche pulling away on mid-corner to corner exit. All of the inside curb heading down into turns 3 and 4. Bentley again closes right up to the back of Grantas Caracas's Porsche. Then Grantas Caracas, of course, pulls away into the Italian sunset. Ivanov catching a little bit of the speed hump on the outside there, something you probably don't want to be doing too much into this race, especially if you're planning on not taking tyres in the 25-second stop. But super hot conditions here tonight, so I think we might see a few more cars taking tyres, but obviously Verstappen pitting this early, going to have some pretty old tyres by the end of the race.
He is, but it's risk versus reward. A lot of these guys are going to be holding themselves up. Now, I wonder if the 747, and yes, they're just coming below us right now over the start-finish straight. They're in clean air. They're not being held up like Ivanov is by Grantas Caracas, and that will pay dividends regardless on if the tires are worn out. Now, will Verstappen need to defend a little bit more? Yes, and they will be slightly ill-equipped to do so. But I like the move. I've always loved a nice undercut, especially if you know I might be quicker than these guys, and I'm not going to be able to make an efficient pass, as Ivanov completely overrunning the corner. We saw that in qualifying as well, trying to maximize. You get over the anti-cut curbs, go for a very wild ride, but well held by Ivanov. They continue their pursuit for P3. Rose, who I said lost all their spots, they did do, but they're still right there, just out of shot in that picture, right behind Rose. In fact, this is Merrill's with Albin Bouquet. And yes, I do see Rose, Ivanov, and Caracas in front. So all these cars still in the same train. They're unfortunately just 6 seconds behind the lead duo of Savalainen and McCauley.
They were seeing kind of Alton Park vibes here, Jesse, from last week, where we saw obviously guys bunching up in 2, 3, 4-man trains at times, following each other, playing follow the leader, snaking around the British countryside. But here we see kind of a similar thing playing out, as we see here Max Payne on the Porsche, I believe, of Rimbaud into one of the hairpin sweepers, and down the back straight towards sector 2. Leave Max Payne on the outside, Rimbaud on the inside. Very brave move there from Max Payne, trying to stick it around the outside there. Definitely not a move I'd be attempting with the camber of the corner on the inside and the curb, trying to use it to suck the car around. But this fight is not done yet as we head down into 11, 12, and 13. Max Payne again to the outside, Porsche on the inside. What a beautiful move from Max Payne there. Certainly a good move indeed, as I believe the stewards, Jesse, of the live stewards here in the Pro Split, have woken up and have started dishing out some penalties.
Yeah, they sure have, but the workload not quite as heavy as it could have been, if I do say so myself. But they have rendered some verdicts here. First of all, lap 1, turn 4, involving the 54, the 138, and the 329. 5-second penalty for car 54. 54 taps the back of the 138, who then taps the 329, causing the 54 to gain a position. Basically, position gain due to contact there. Racing incident between the 171, the 316, and the 134 on the same lap at the end of that lap 1. 5-second penalty for car 406 for hitting the back of the 56, losing a place for car 56. We saw that. And racing incident between the 747 and the 223. Racing incident between the 406 and the 19. Racing incident involving the 2. Racing incident involving the 116 and the 329. Racing incident involving the 747 and the 99. Grim keeping me well and truly busy here. I was just going to mention that about Verstappen as well, because I saw Wouter Billen come in and do their mandatory stop, and they're half a sector in front of Verstappen's 747, and that leads me to believe, or it led me to believe at the time, that the 747 came in due to something that happened on the racetrack. Seeing the penalty report seems to confirm that, John.
Yeah, possibly picked up a little bit of damage on the Bentley, wanted to maybe get it repaired. Felt like it was maybe hindering Christoph too much, so wanted to maybe jump in and see what he could do to get that repaired and obviously get himself back out into that clean air. And looking at the pit stop timer between the two, Verstappen ran a 1:16 from pit in to pit out. Obviously, Misano pit exit is typically very long. Speed limit report does come out very late on that. We ride on board here with Hugo Merles looking down into the inside of Anora Rose. Sun setting just over the hill in the distance. No move to be had here, but Hugo Merles obviously wanting to kind of capitalise on as much as he can in this race. Obviously a very bad showing out on the park, so hopefully he's turned his mindset around and he does look to be in a much better place up in P7. Maybe he can follow the Rose BMW through the field. Obviously okay ahead in the 99 Audi. Saw him with some very, very good pace last time out as well. So super competitive field at the front here, but Ivanov with a 5-second penalty is going to possibly pop him just outside this train when the pit stops start rolling around.
Ooh, very close stuff here. Hugo Merrill's trying to stay as close as possible to the back of the BMW to make that move. And oh, it gets very close and very loose there was Hugo, and just in front of them, Ivanov going a long way around their competitor, getting P3. Caracas completely defenseless on the straight. Caracas did everything they could. It just wasn't quite enough. Ivanov has to get a move on here. That 5-second penalty between him will drop him well and truly behind this group. They'd come outside the top 5 right now if they came in to pit right now. They have to maintain, or should I say build, that gap in front even. It's 6.8 to Macaulay in front. Macaulay is right on the back of Savalainen, as those two are pretty much nose to tail, pretty much like this right now. Gregory Ivanov, work to do though, but got that pass done and made it look easy there.
Certainly caught Grantas Caracas napping there in the Porsche, I think. Caracas, we have seen him put up a great defense before in situations like that, so maybe not wanting to lose time fighting Ivanov. Maybe he understands that the Bentley is that quicker car. Obviously not really too phased if he gets past. 5-second penalty in the pit lane. Obviously Caracas, as it stands at the moment, does not have anything to serve at the moment, so could just be a mental game more than anything for Caracas, allowing Ivanov through, allowing Ivanov to think. Obviously he's got the better of Caracas, and obviously later on in the race we're going to see Caracas going back past again. So probably playing it very smart. It's the only problem in super competitive splits such as this, where everybody is separated by such a small margin. It's going to be really, really hard for Gregory Ivanov to pull out that 5 seconds that he requires. Speaking of pulling out, here we look at Hugo Merles from the back of Anora Rose's car, but no move to be had into turn 1. It's going to be the battle of the best French driver for the last position in the top 5, I believe. UK ahead is also a French driver, so got a little bit of a French tricolor going on here.
Yeah, very nice. Hope that they play very nicely, because also, you know, you consider if you do get mad that you have words that you can understand them. So hopefully nothing of that nature going on, and So very good racing so far is my big takeaway so far. By the way, I want to clear something up I said earlier. I said that Wouter Billen's 183 came out in front of Verstappen after the pit stop. That was the case. It's just unfortunate that Billen is 2 laps off of the overall pace. So something dramatic happening to Billen that has fallen them several laps off. Billen, I know, had that drive-through for the track limits, but they're more than 1 lap off the pace, according to my timing sheet. But either way, the 183 did come out in front of Verstappen, but they're several laps down, so that was a moot point entirely. Verstappen is the leader of the cars that have pitted, beating Magazi and Mazzola out of the pit lane. So original point still stands. Watch Verstappen to see how many places they gain. Could be well and truly inside the top 10 at the end of this one. But like we said earlier, it might be on the defensive back foot a little bit as well.
I believe we saw Verstappen pulling similar moves in the Asia Masters. We'll see if he got a little bit of a bad start, worse than his rivals, got stuck behind somebody he knew he was quicker than on paper. He would always tend to dive into the pit lane and sort out the pit stop and just get on his way again. So obviously he'll sit kind of outside the top 20 for the first couple of laps, and then we'll see him kind of start pouncing and making moves when everybody else starts coming in the pit lane. But I have just been told from race control that this man here on your screen, Thomas Jack, has just picked up a drive-through penalty for what I believe to be track limits, Jesse.
You're 100% spot on, John. That is what it is, because the only additional penalty report I have for you at the moment is a racing incident between the 133 and the 904. Otherwise, no drive-through penalties being given by the stewards at the moment. So that is track limits. We expected it to be a big talking point of the day, as it always is around Misano, and not even I could have or would have predicted how major it has been. I think that's 4 so far. And just an update on Billen, one final thing. Mr. Heilman, our broadcaster, has also pointed out that something else was amiss on Billen's car, because they sat there for a additional amount of time in comparison to what a normal stop would be, so damage or something. So that's where that additional lap down has come from the field. That all sorted. There's an additional racing incident between the 56 and the 13. Otherwise, all good so far.
Great to see the stewards not having too much of a headache, like last time out at Alton Park, when we saw some spectacular scenes down at the islands section. So the stewards have got a little bit of time to maybe chill, discuss things, and you know, have a little bit more time to talk over these incidents. Obviously, less incidents means less work, so great to see these guys are kind of respecting each other now. The field has spread out a bit. However, the French battle does still rage on for P6. We see just ahead there another Frenchman in P5 in the Audi R8 99. So Rose going to be watching the mirrors closely for that Ferrari. We've seen Hugo getting very close and very friendly with the back of that new M4 GT3 into the final sector, possibly where Rose is a little bit weaker. Hugo feels he's a little bit stronger, maybe. Might try and, you know, analyze a few laps behind Rose, see where he's struggling, see where he's gaining, and try and fire that black Ferrari up the inside. He looks very close down into this final sector. Ferrari definitely looking like the more stable platform through here. Penultimate corner tucking right in behind Rose. Maybe try and maximize corner exit down into the final corner. Can't get too near, but sizing up a move in theory into turn 1 if I was Hugo's. We see the guys behind spreading out a little bit. Thomas Jack still with that drive through to take that one less lap, so he's going to be in this time by with that. As we see how much inside curb there Hugo takes through turn 1 compared to Rose. It's really night and day difference. Rose kind of tickling the speed humps, and Hugo pretty much jumping over them in the Ferrari, taking the prancing horse to a whole new level.
Yeah, you'd almost think it'd be the reverse of that with the BMW. Ladke has had some issue down into turn 1, and the Porsche snapping, and almost a good save, and the BMW not knowing exactly where to go with a car spinning like that. Unfortunately, chooses the wrong number in the lottery and makes contact with the spinning car of Ladke. They've been able to get that car going, but yeah, I would expect this to have been the opposite, is my point. The Ferrari, I wouldn't have expected to be going over the curbs quite like they are, and I would have expected the BMW to be a little bit more aggressive. That's just not the case there. Good setup on that Ferrari and contact there. Thomas Jack, insult to injury on their night.
Yeah, Stewart's possibly going to have to be looking at that one between the NSX, I believe, and Thomas Jack there. But Jack obviously will be in for his drive-through this time by. And this time by again, Hugo still looking very close to the back of Rose. Still can't quite get that extra little bit they need to pull alongside and set a move up for either turn 1 or any of the other super wide corners here at Misano. And we see on the lap times comparing, Hugo is the quicker car. So certainly in a best lap context, last time by context, these guys are literally matching each other. There's literally nothing between them. Why the Ferrari certainly can't find a way past. It's going to rely on a mistake from Rose, and we saw last time out Alton Park that Rose barely made a mistake and barely put a foot wrong. So it'll be super hard for Hugo to find a way past the M4. The M4 looks to the inside, then moves to the outside, trying to maximize as much entry curb as possible to kind of slingshot their way through the bank corner. Thomas Jack has cleared his drive-through, however, obviously has not cleared the mandatory pit stop. That will be a separate trip down pit lane later on. Jack is set to lose a fair amount of time due to that. Although it's going to be a race of attrition, Jesse. Obviously, we don't see how many track cuts these guys have until they hit the magic number where it flashes up on our screen. So some of these people could be sat on, you know, bordering on the limit now, and they've still got another 38 minutes to go yet.
Wouldn't surprise me at all. You know, sometimes we try to spy on the streamers in the race, the folks that participate and also stream at the same time. It always gives us a little bit of extra insight. Sometimes we're completely clueless as well. High drama for sure. And folks, if you've never experienced it, there is nothing like flirting with getting a drive-through penalty, seeing that track warnings at 3, because you know if you do it again, you are going to have a very, very bad time. You know, we haven't talked about the weather here tonight at all, and I feel like we should. Obviously qualified near sunset. The sun has went over the horizon at this point, 8:42 p.m. here at Misano, and 30 degrees C. That is rather toasty. I'm not sure what the Italians would say about that. For me, 30 degrees C is a decent day, but I know in the UK you would consider that quite boiling.
Yeah, 30 degrees would certainly be very hot temperature for us in the UK. We're kind of happy sat around, you know, 10 to 15 degrees C. So yeah, being 30 is kind of, you know, record-breaking temperatures since records began. So yeah, I wouldn't be coping too well if it wasn't for the air conditioning in the box at the moment, Jesse. But I know to other countries that 30 degrees is very mild. Australia and New Zealand, I'm looking at you guys.
Well, if you were South African, you'd be reaching for a jacket, I think, if it was 30 degrees. Little cold.
Yeah, certainly so. Get those jackets and trousers on, whereas us Brits would be getting our vests and shorts on. So yeah, two very different cultures, two very different temperatures, and yeah, very different conditions. But 30 degrees is not going to lend itself too well to the Pirelli tyres underneath these cars. Going to be absolutely screaming towards the end of the race. Obviously, when the sun goes down, in theory, the air temp, and track temp should drop. In theory, so hopefully, want to be leaving it probably, Jesse, as late as you can at the moment, because obviously, if you pit too early, your pressures aren't going to be in that magic window towards the end of the race when temperatures start getting cooler. And speaking of getting cooler, this certainly isn't. This is just hotting up between these two French people as we head down again in towards Sector 2, running on board with Hugo Merlers in the 13 Ferrari. They say unlucky for some, certainly not unlucky for Hugo, as he takes the wider line going in, tries the old switcheroo tactic, but no luck there. Tucks back in behind Nora Rose, down into double apex right before the, what is essentially, I guess, the back straightaway here, although with 3 kinks in it. Certainly a place where you probably don't want to be making it too wide, although we did see Max Payne succeed from it. But we see the M4 there just getting that slightly better run off the corner, dragging away a little bit, and then we see towards the end of the straight Hugo kind of closing the gap up again. So It's like you said, Jesse, earlier on in the broadcast, every car here has its own strength almost.
No, it absolutely does, and we've already seen one of the strengths from Honor Rose already in this season. Go back to Barcelona, race number 2 or 3, I think it was, where she got a top 5. The reason she got a top 5 was she was incredibly good at defending her position. She's decided not to defend her position in this particular case because Honor Rose in the pit lane. They'll bring Albin Bouquet with them as well, the back half of the top 10. Be very curious where Verstappen comes out in relation to these two. And now, what does Hugo Merles do in the 13 Ferrari? I would have thought if I was Hugo, I would have tried to be the first one to pit between the two of them. I think the ball is in Honor's court right now, getting into the pit lane first, but we will see. Merles is going to need to absolutely run some stonking laps here to try and jump Honor in the pit lane. Otherwise, it's going to be an exercise in frustration. Several cars in the pit lane, most notably focusing on the 56 and the 99, and I think a lot of them are going to get out in front of Verstappen, who is coming up to the final corner. The 99 is released from the pit box, so is Rose. Did Bouquet get out in front of Rose? I think they did. I'm pretty confident in saying Honor Rose repaired the damage they got from the Ivanov accident.
Yeah, possibly some damage for Rose from Ivanov, and I believe Hugo might have tapped the back of that BMW as well, so possibly two lots of damage to contend there for Rose. As we look into pit out timer, there is a good 4-second gap between Albin Bouquet and Honor Rose in those two pit stops. So Rose definitely with some damage. Christoph Verstappen with a very fast time through pit into pit out with a 1:16, so wasting absolutely no time. I believe has slot themselves in between Honor Rose and Albin Bouquet. So diffuse the fight of the French slightly with a Belgium in between. So going to be excited to see how Verstappen can claw his way back. Hopefully he's not going to get held up too much by the 99 Audi and still kind of press on. There's a good gap between them on the circuit radar at the moment, but obviously time will tell on that fight.
Hugo Merles is in pit lane 1 lap later. A response from Honor, perhaps. Barzaghi also in. Jan Climbs further back in the field is in as well. A lot of drivers coming in just shy of the halfway point. A few more than I would normally expect. I would have expected a lot of these cars to at least wait one more lap or go as long as humanly possible. They have not done that tonight, as the majority of the field now have already completed their pit stop. I think there's only 12 cars left that need to do that. Actually, it's 11. I can't count. I do apologize. The worst kept secret in RCI history. I can't actually do the math. Hugo Merles out of the pit lane in the 13, and they will be in front of Honor Rose, but they will not be in front of Albin Bouquet. Albin Bouquet had a stonking pit lane, and they have jumped the lot of them. That 99 Audi had a fantastic stop. Now, did Hugo repair damage? That's also a possibility, because if Honor had damage on the rear end, I wonder if maybe he had damage as well. Hugo did, and I'm forced to believe they fixed that. It's all coming up. Albin Bouquet is my point.
Yeah, Albin definitely with a good showing here. Much better than what we saw out last time at Alton Park. We obviously saw Albin getting very sideways across a lot of the curbs and eventually did bin it into the wall. So guys, we had a lot flatter here at Alton Park. Definitely, certainly a lot better for Albin Bouquet. A few more penalties coming in from the stewards and a few more cars jumping into pit lane. We have Grantas Caracas, Bastida, and we have Joe McCauley, Max Payne, and Jack back in again. Jack with an additional 5 seconds from the stewards on this one.
By the way, just a correction, Albin Bouquet, I'm told, was in front of them all the time. I am confusing Bouquet with Caracas, who is in pit lane now. I don't know how I got those two confused. They're not in the same car. Their names do not sound anywhere near identical. I do apologize to both Bouquet and Caracas. And I thought they were reversed. I thought Caracas was up in the front and Bouquet was at the bottom half of the top 10. They, oh, no, Caracas is in front. I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm pretty sure at some point, Albin Bouquet was running ninth in somehow got in front of all of them. I could be a bit wrong about that, but nevertheless, Joe McCauley has come in, Caracas has come in, and left the pit lane. Here is Grantis Caracas, the Dark Shade 19. They are just in front of Bouquet's 99 Audi. And I believe Joe McCauley is somewhere, yes, indeed, up the straightaway in front of the lot of them in the 123, I'm pretty sure. So that's all cycled out nicely. More cars coming in. Are you surprised, John Dalton, that almost nobody is trying the overcut tonight?
Yeah, it's a very strange one, Jesse. We normally see typically in ACC, obviously, a lot of drivers taking their cars as far as they can go on strategy, diving in with, a couple of minutes left on the pit window and then completing their stop. But a lot of the drivers choosing to go on the halfway point tonight, or going, like I say, for that undercut, such as this man ahead, Christoph Verstappen, getting very friendly and acquainted with fellow border Frenchman Hugo Merles in the Ferrari number 13 as they battle side by side down the back straight while we were just discussing pit stops and positions. So, Verstappen's strategy has kind of paid off here. He runs a little bit wide, gives Hugo the inside line into turn 3. Hugo thinks better of it, ducks back in behind, and all the while we see in the back a shot there, and Nora Rose looking to pounce when she can get a little bit closer to these guys that are fighting. So going to be a very interesting European fight very soon on our hands, Jesse, I think.
Yeah, it's going to be very close till the end. I do have a definitive answer as these two do go side by side, and it looks like Hugo Merles is going to win that fight. Verstappen will have to settle in, and there may be the tire issue already. Keep in mind, Verstappen was the first among the top 10 cars to come in, and we were worrying about the tires, the life, the longevity of the Pirelli rubber, and was that a cause there? You be the judge at home. Now, I want to go back to Bouquet. Bouquet did start P9. I went back and I checked, but they drove all the way in front of, well, pretty much everybody else, really, except the top couple. And that's the bit that I missed. Did that on the racetrack, did Albin Bouquet in the 99. So they would have been in front of Honora Rose and the like before that. Completely skipped that in my brain. I'm still thinking Bouquet was back in 9th place. Not the case at all. Caracas also inside the top 5 at the time. Jeep in the 276 in the pit lane. Tomlinson Dennis also in. Gregory Ivanov takes the lead of the race after Savalainen's pit stop. Of course, Ivanov still has a pit stop to give. Rather unfortunately for him, an additional 5-second penalty at that.
Very unfortunate indeed. And speaking of unfortunate, Bastida in the 96 BMW has also managed to pick up a drive-through for track limits. So again, not something you want to be doing here, as we see Christoph Verstappen there coming under fire now from Nora Rose. Rose is going to be very fired up to try and get past Verstappen, to get onto the back of Hugo, to take away some more championship points from his contention as they come down into the back straightaway. Little wiggle there from Verstappen using all of the exit curb. We've got Nora Rose near enough bump drafting the back of the Bentley as they head down into the kink. Rose on the inside curb gets the inside line for 11, 12 and 13. This is surely going to be Rose's corner to take, and it is. Squeezes Verstappen a little bit towards the exit curb and sets herself up nicely for turn 14, and takes the takes P7 away from Christoph Verstappen here. And this now allows her to essentially be released onto the back of Hugo Merles' Ferrari. Certainly try and chase down much time as she can in the final 25.5 minutes we have to go here at Misano.
Well, one thing's for sure, the first half of the race did not go Honora Rose's way, and that's not good for her championship hopes. It's not good for her race, and looking to make the second half just a bit better. You've got to be thinking in your mind, if you're any of these drivers, okay, people in front of me are going to have issues as Gregory Ivanov has come into the pit lane, the last of the late pitters. And you can't really say that today because they had 23 minutes left to pit. They've all elected to come in around the halfway point. But I feel like a nice recovery for Noor keeps them in the championship fight, but they've got to continue to attack. Hopefully, with the repaired car, they can get some of these spots back. Next job is 2.8 seconds up the road. That's getting by Hugo Merles in the 13 Ferrari. Then it's an even further ride up inside the top 5 if that is manageable. Xavier Rimbald in the 54 back in the field. This is for 15th place. Brigitte in the 276. These two fighting over the last spot in the top 15. And that might be the last point.
Certainly every point does matter here at RCI, so definitely worth trying your luck on your next opponent up the road. There's no point giving up. Obviously 24 minutes still to go. Still a few drivers probably bordering on the edge of track limit warnings, so certainly something you do want to keep in contention. And Kirsten, the commentator there, as we see the 55 pick up a drive-through of Tomlinson Dennis for track limits out of the final corner, I believe, with how quick that went from 3 to 2 laps to serve. But speaking now of Barzaghi here in the number 2, riding on board with the Porsche through this slow section. The Bentley is an absolute armful to try and get around here. You see how much Porsche is having to lift on and off the throttle every time it gets near and gets far, and then you'll find the Bentley, will pull away from the Porsche on the straight. And then we'll probably see this Porsche closing up on the brakes. It looks to the outside here, not having any of it, not much grip around the outside, as Barzaghi did find out. Verstappen ahead is probably on old tyres, judging by how quick his pit stop was, so not going to be all too great being in that Bentley with worn tyres through these twisty sections. Barzaghi not giving him an inch here right now as they head down the back straightaway. You will see Bentley pulling away ever so slightly until the slipstream does kick in, and the Porsche can kind of close up that little bit more. But again, through 11, 12 and 13, not looking like Barzaghi is going to have much of a move on the cards. A bit oversteery, that Porsche, obviously engine at the rear, are becoming the kind of lightest it's ever been, getting very close into the hairpin penultimate turn, jumping over the speed humps on the inside. Verstappen there exercising all the track limits on the outside, keeping it very tidy through the final turn. But I believe could be a lapped car ahead of them, about to kind of play a curveball for Verstappen. It's going to be very tricky for him. Hopefully his fellow Belgium racer does allow Verstappen through and make it very easy. If he gets held up at all, Barzaghi is going to be straight up the inside of that Bentley, I feel.
Yeah, I'm just watching on board with Barzaghi there and just thinking, man, oh man, does Barzaghi wish that they were in any other car other than the Porsche on the straight. Verstappen helping him there. Could that be the entire life of the Pirellis showing up here late into the race, I wonder? But, the Billen car gets out of the way, but it's going to be 3 wide briefly, and down the outside is Barzaghi. Can they hold it? No. The Bentley power in a straight line, just a little bit too much, but takes a really poor entrance into the corner and gets Barzaghi right back to them. But unfortunately, the incredibly long dogleg straight, we ride on board the rear wing of Verstappen and watch as that number 2 Porsche gets smaller. Allen, too, and the 223 BMW has caught this group as well and got very close to the back. But here's the other side of that coin. You get down into the braking zone, and look what happened. Barzaghi made up every single second of that time that they lost on the straight. It's incredible. This racetrack is so fantastically balanced. You will get stuck in fights like this pretty much all day. I just saw Tomlinson Dennis come in to serve their drive-through penalty. Of course, that was for track limits. And there, of course, were some penalties. I think there was a 5-second penalty for the 133. Everything else had been a racing incident so far. John Dalton, are we going to get more drive-throughs at the end? Late drama in the top 10, do you think?
I mean, 20 minutes still to go. Obviously, you've got Verstappen here on very old tyres on a very big defensive drive for Barzaghi's Porsche behind. So again, it's going to be all too easy to, tap the throttle that little bit too early and try and maximize the exit curve as much as you can. And all of a sudden you've run over it once, twice, three times, and you're coming in. Going to be a few drivers, I feel, up and down the field that are going to be bordering on those track limits. And if it was me personally, I'd be trying to save the track limits for this scenario. As cheesy as it sounds, stuck behind a Bentley in a Porsche, what can you do? Oh, I know. I'll take a little bit more extra exit curve on the exit of the last turn, try and maximize my run down to turn one, or something to that nature. As we see Thomas Jack here on a little bit of a comeback drive, sending out the inside of the ATA 505 BMW. And looking behind them, they also have Hladky coming back on his drive as well. Obviously spun out in turn one, I believe, and it got collected by a fellow driver. Very unfortunate, as Hladky makes it around the outside of Atta down onto the dogleg straight. Obviously with the Porsche, we're going to probably see it tail away again, as what do we have here? Joshua Allen has got past Barzaghi somehow. The replay here, kind of missed the beginning of it, but say looks like Barzaghi has outbraked himself into turn 14, I believe. And Joshua Allen has just said, thank you very much, I'll be having some of that. So that allows Joshua up onto now the back of Verstappen. So rather than a Porsche in his rearview mirror, he's now going to find a very big snarling nostril grill in there, and that's going to be even harder probably to defend from. As we flick back to another race replay here, possibly the beginning. Here we go, the Barzaghi incident. Barzaghi behind, Verstappen ahead. Come in, and Barzaghi fires it up the inside. Very last minute attempt to try and get past Verstappen. Verstappen sees it coming and kind of turns away to avoid that little bit of contact, but very, very ballsy move, Jesse.
Well, I was going to say that you saw how quickly Barzaghi's Porsche can pull up to the back of another car, and I was just wondering, did Barzaghi get it wrong and overshoot the corner, trying to stay as close to the back of the NSN Bentley as possible? And in a way, yeah, that is what happened. Not the way that I thought it happened. Definitely didn't expect to dive down the inside, but Verstappen, who is a driver who rather unfortunately gets sent on a lot for some reason, always seems to have really poor luck in those situations. Spidey senses was tingling there and held a pretty wheel and escaped certain danger. And more than that for Verstappen, it also let Allen through, as you saw, catching back up to the group. Something I don't want to get lost in all of this, where the pit stop cycle has completed, as Allen looks down to the inside and surely will make short work of this, and does, into turn 4 and 5. Take a look on how this was set up. Just slow out of the corner and a little bit wide for Verstappen, and it's easy peasy for Joshua Allen. Just about a perfect run and an easy job of it at that, as we suspect the tires are falling off of that Bentley quite heavily. We've had a Bentley expert in chat, Hemi Husky, who we all know as Mr. Ryan Mawson. Says that it falls off considerably in the tight sectors 1 and 3. Was there a send here, I wonder, before we get to the straight? Very wide indeed was Allen, and I'm not sure what that was about, but that has let Verstappen back through now.
Hey, absolutely fabulous move there from Christoph Verstappen, proving why he was the Asian Masters Championship here at RCI only a couple of months ago. But putting up a great defensive drive on those worn tyres, and like Husky says, it does become a bit of a pig to drive in sector 1 and 3. So we are seeing that when we do ride on board with Verstappen, the Barzaghi, and now Allen. We do see the Bentley very much struggling through sector 1. So they're a little straight between 1 and 2. It does kind of pull a little bit of a gap. And then obviously any kind of turn after that, it does really struggle. But Bentley does have some excellent straight line speed, as we see Barzaghi there making a mistake behind Allen and wrestling the car, keeping it on the straight and narrow, but using all of the extra runoff as we ride on board the helmet cam here, looking at the back of the Barless Esports M4. Gets a little bit of oversteer and very well held, even with a touch on the grass there. They all too easy, as we saw one of the Porsches earlier, Hladky, losing it in that sector 1, as we see Joshua Allen jinking left to right with Christoph Verstappen down into the bank turn 7 or 8, I believe, as we head in towards sector 2. say the Bentley is looking very worse aware on its tyres, and Joshua Allen is going to be getting super frustrated behind him, looking at the back of that absolute boat. But maybe this is why Verstappen gets sent on so much. Maybe Verstappen is just such an excellent defensive driver. It just makes you very frustrated when you sit behind him, and you'll just be willing to try absolutely anything to try and get past him.
Well, certainly you have to at a racetrack like this. You kind of got to pick your moments and you got to kind of go for it. And Verstappen knows a lot about winning races and winning championships. He knows that there's going to be days where you outrun the field, and there's going to be days where you have to defend against the field. And he's done the best of both worlds, in my opinion, the last year here in RCI. So it's just the nature of the track, and it's unfortunate that Verstappen usually is at the sharp end of the field and gets the worst of it on a lot of those occasions. What I was going to say earlier, by the way, is I don't want this to get lost in all of this, is the battle between Savalainen and Joe McCauley. But we go back to Ivanov, who had that penalty. See, just a nice pass down the inside. Ways given by the Audi there. No harm, no foul. Very well done. Ivanov up another spot, up into P4. Of course, that was Bouquet surrendering that spot. I wouldn't have said I saw that coming, but there you have it. Ivanov incredibly quick here in the late going. But no, Savalainen and McCauley, remember, they were less than half a second off of each other. Joe McCauley still has the Speed Juice fastest lap of the race award, but Savalainen was a little bit quicker in the pit lane and has maintained a 3.2 second gap. That does fluctuate down to 3 seconds. It has been a little higher than 3.2, but it always seems to come back to 3.2, and it's well done by Jonas Savalainen. Absolutely dominating today. That's what we'll remember. We won't remember that the entire first half of this race, it was very close. Joe McCauley has given a very great chase. All Juna, though, has to do, John, keep it on the black stuff. Don't get a dreaded drive-through now.
Sometimes easier said than done on the drive-through, especially if you're already sat on 2. It does kind of play on your mind that, you know, it's like one more curve and that could spell the end of it. So hopefully Jonas Savalainen does keep it very, very safe indeed. But Joe McCauley has put up an excellent fight, like you say, at the beginning of the race against the Mercedes. Just it might not be the one this night here at Misano. Look still towards the back of the Bentley of Christoph Verstappen. Nothing more that Joshua Allen has up his sleeve at the moment. Allen making a bit of a mistake out the last corner a couple of laps ago has allowed Verstappen to kind of stretch his legs out a little bit more. So obviously the Ballas esports driver is going to want to be getting his head down, focus on what he's doing rather than what Verstappen is doing ahead. And in theory, he should, in theory, be able to get past him and get past that wounded Bentley on those scrubbed Pirellis. Very tricky situation to be in, Jesse, when you don't quite have the car underneath you. You don't quite have enough faith in the car to tip it through the corners. It's very easily to mentally distract yourself thinking about the state the car is in rather than what you need to do to keep the guy behind ahead of you. Or sorry, the guy behind you.
No, I couldn't have said that better myself. It does weigh on your conscience, because the last thing you want to do, and I think one of the big misconceptions about motorsport is you don't care about whoever you're racing other than beating them. That's just not true. You don't want to ever ruin anybody else's race. I mean, even the contact Ivanov and Rose had earlier in the race, what did Ivanov immediately do? Back off the throttle and let Rose back through for the time being. And it's you don't want to move your competitor out of the way, really. And if you have a car that has handling we'll call subpar or ill handling cars, it becomes a bit of a problem, because you know you have speed and you want to get by somebody, but you also are fearful that if this doesn't come off, there's going to be a big issue. Barzaghi, for instance, we've seen that car was driving very well, and then all of a sudden they had that real big issue in Del Parco, and it all sort of went away from them. I know they have since been given a warning as well for another incident that happened earlier, but that was the Sind, I'm pretty sure, the Barzaghi Sind. But Anyway, no, you don't ever want to take your competitor out. You don't want to make contact. You want to make it as clean as possible. And it shakes your confidence when your car is not handling 100%.
Yeah, certainly so. As we see Joshua Allen here making contact with the back of Verstappen's Bentley, and Verstappen winding on all of the opposite lock and somehow saving that, Jesse. That was insane.
Well, that certainly didn't help the tires on the NSN Bentley, and I can't believe for the second time tonight I've made a statement, and then the opposite's happened. What am I saying? Of course I can believe that.
The curse of the commentator maybe strikes again, but never say never, as the back of the rear wing of this Bentley says. He is still ahead. Joshua Allen has backed out of the move, has allowed Verstappen to resume position. This, of course, has allowed Barzaghi back onto the back of this little train. Yeah, an absolute wonderful save, banging it down the gears, and you know, TC possibly saving it a little bit, but those rear Pirellis are going to be very, very hot, and not a lot of life left on them now, I'm sure, Jesse.
Well, to the point that we were making earlier, what did Allen do whenever he made that contact? He backed off, and he was probably very thankful in his car that Verstappen was able to gather that back up and get going. Allen did not continue to make an attempt to pass Verstappen at all, and they all gathered it back up, and they continue on their merry way. That's kind of the point. You don't ever want to wreck anybody. You don't want to have contact. You want to pass them clean. Ill-fated move did not happen. But like you said, what that did is that let Barzaghi climb back into this one as Giorgio Magazzi in the 134 Honda drive through penalty track limits.
8 minutes to go, and we're still handing out drive-throughs for track limits, so these guys are going to be teetering on a knife's edge now. You know, it's always going to be playing on your conscience that you have a couple, and you know, you could be that person that gets the final one with, you know, even a minute to go, 30 seconds to go. And obviously, if you time it wrong, you're not even going to have time to drive through the pit lane to clear it. You're going to end up with a whacking post-race time penalty on top of that as well. So you go from bad to worse here. So touch wood that all these drivers are playing it very safe. Although as we see Joshua Allen behind there using all of the entry curve into turn 1 and 2. Heading around 3 down to 4. Looking to the inside of Verstappen. Not quite close enough to fire up the inside yet, but we see Bentley there running a lot wider than that M4. The M4 is able to, you know, tuck it in a lot more, use less of the exit curb, get slightly better drive through the two 90-degree right-handers. Joshua Allen tucking in the slipstream of the Bentley, seeing if he can get a move done here. Still not close enough, but then we've got Barzaghi behind him looking ever so racy as well. Very wide through that corner. You're going to be want to backing out there, Joshua Allen, because you're going to be picking up the old track limits, and you know, could go from bad to worse for you. You're looking in a pretty comfortable position at the moment, but Verstappen putting up a great defensive drive in that Bentley.
Well, this battle for 8th place might go down to the final lap. One battle that doesn't look like it's going to go down to the final lap is Savalainen and Macaulay. Said the gap is holding steady at 3.2 seconds. It's nearly 5 seconds the gap now, as whatever Macaulay had in the first half of the race, they do not have it here. I wonder if Macaulay short-filled that car trying to run down Savalainen, and here just doesn't have quite the balance they need, or maybe Savalainen planned it all along to be light at the end. Strategy is always a topic of conversation, and right now it's going Savalainen's way. Let's talk about what's at stake for the top couple of cars. Caracas trying to stay relevant in this championship. Joe Macaulay, your championship leader. Savalainen outside the top 5, but with a win today and pole position, that's going to be, what, 68 points? That's a lot of points, and that could bring them back into the conversation for the final couple of rounds. Talked early about my fear of somebody falling out of championship competition. Might that be Honor Rose or some of the other cars hanging on? Thomas Jack continuing to make their way back through the field after their earlier penalty.
Certainly great to see drivers not giving up when they do get penalties. And it is great to see the championship still wide open, as you say, Jesse. You know, you've got Grantos Caracas currently residing in P4 in the championship, obviously P3 on the road provisionally at the moment. You've got Martin Lawrence down in P7 in the Bentley in the championship. Nowhere to be found at the moment after the very bad accident out of the final turn on lap 1, curse the commentator, so that's going to shuffle him down the grid. But then you say Jonas Savalainen is going to be pushed right up into contention with, like you say, the pole and the race win. Sadly not the fastest lap at the moment, although there isn't too much between it on the live timing, so even Savalainen could find that little bit extra, could maybe give him the fastest lap points as well.
That'd be the dream for Salvo, wouldn't it? He would absolutely love to get that fastest lap and get the maximum points. 72, by the way, the max points you can get on a weekend. And they've got 80 some in the champ right now. 72, that would do just nicely. They wouldn't be able to get up there and contend with Macaulay today as far as the championship is concerned. As you see Verstappen and Allen side by side again. They touch through turn 4 and get it sorted finally. Allen back in front of Verstappen. Barzaghi now looking to make the move on Verstappen. Very defensive move from both Allen, Verstappen, and Barzaghi having to follow suit down the straight. The Porsche closer than it's been in quite some time. Looking down to the inside, it'll become the outside. Allen pulling away ever so slightly. Remember, the last time this happened, Verstappen was able to get back around and takes a look on this occasion as well. Not quite close enough. Allen still in front. Verstappen held up a little bit. Barzaghi right behind them, but unfortunately on the dogleg straight, that is not going to do the Porsche justice here.
I wonder if we'll see an absolute send of a move like we saw just a few minutes ago on Verstappen. Verstappen covering the inside nicely. Barzaghi very sideways through that section. The Porsche rear engine there absolutely death to contend with. Nearly lost it with a bit of a pendulum effect. You know, the swing of the rear of the Porsche is very easy to get into. You slide it one way, you try and catch it, it fires you the other way, and sometimes fires you into the wall. So Barzaghi's car looking very loose towards the end stage of this race. 3 minutes 20 just over on the clock to go. We go one more time through turn 1 with Verstappen. Going to see the Porsche closing right up to the back of that Bentley. The Porsche's tire is certainly very much fresher than the Bentley, but then we see the grunt of the Bentley dragging itself out of turn 3 down to 4 and 5 as we see another drive-through track limits pop up for Radke in P15, and the Porsche with just 2 minutes 55 to go. That's going to be a real kick in the teeth for Radke, who's had an absolute stinker of a race so far.
Yeah, some days it rains, it pours, even if it's 29 degrees C and only partly cloudy. But for these three drivers, you always wonder, you try to get in the mind of a driver, are you enjoying this, or are you frustrated that this was the battle that you are forced into? Me personally, I just love racing somebody. I don't really care what position it's for, and these three have put on a show. The stewarding team have pointed out to me, Grim Lilith in particular, have pointed out to me that all these contacts, other than the warning for an excessive dive bomb by Barzaghi on Verstappen earlier, have been deemed a racing incident and no further action. They've not taken each other out. They've not actually changed positions, so they've been able to let it go, because it's very obvious at this point this was the only battle they could have ever hoped for to begin with. They're racing each other very hard, and as long as somebody doesn't get taken out, it really doesn't matter. So it's just been race on. But of course, the rare warning of, hey, you're getting a bit too feisty, settle down perhaps. But Verstappen very nearly lost it. And of course, if Verstappen would have lost it with the contact on Allen, that would have been a vastly different conversation we're having right now, because at that point, well, obviously, that's a takeout. Final couple of minutes, final minute and a half of the race. What a race it's been. It's going to be a day that should see Savalainen throw their name back into the championship fight. And on top of all of that, don't let the narrative get away from you. Juna Savalainen has had several frustrating races here at Misano in a row in RCI competition. They've led this race several times, and it's been frustrating to finish every single time. They've got drive-throughs. They've been taken out. They've had bad pit stops. Today, though, knock on wood, looks like it's all going their way.
Certainly so, and one fight that isn't over yet by the looks of it is Gregory Ivanov and Grantas Caracas. We saw Ivanov with an additional 5 seconds on his pit stop timer, but it hasn't put him out of contention with Caracas. This Bentley looking super racy behind the Porsche, and we've seen the grunt of the Bentley down into Sector 3, Jesse. So could this be one final send for Ivanov? He's looking very good on the brakes.
He's
Not much between the front end of that Bentley and the rear end of that Porsche, but a little bit too committed maybe. Had to back out of it and give Caracas some room. So he's going to have to set himself up for Sector 3. Certainly a lot better than that. But we know the Bentley can succeed out of there as the Battle of the French rages on here with Albin Bouquet and Hugo Mels in the Ferrari. These guys still going at it right up to the end as the timer hits 0. Still battles up and down the grid everywhere, Jesse.
Yeah, it's going to be a fight to the line, and we usually see contact in this case. Hugo Merrill's nearly making contact there. A little bit of a wiggle saves those two in that fight. We got this fight for third place as well. Grantas Caracas and Gregory Ivanov. These two, will we see a sin from Ivanov? I think you already know the answer. I think you will see just that. Juno Savalainen coming to the line. It's been a frustrating year for him here at Misano, but it ends today. The Demons exercise. Savalainen wins it at Misano. Joe McCauley for FFS Racing maintains the championship points lead in second, and your guess is as good as mine for third, John.
Hey, it's going to go to Caracas, I feel. Ivanov just not that great into the final sector that he could have been, as maybe Verstappen here losing another place, or challenging, sorry, Joshua Allen here ahead for the position 8 that he did take off him. These guys still super close, coming up towards the line into the penultimate corner. Verstappen's Bentley has clung on to those worn Pirellis since about 54 minutes to go, and he's still proving that he could potentially be challenging Joshua Allen. If only we had another lap in it, Jesse. Hey, Allen takes P8 from Verstappen in P9, from Barzaghi in P10, as Malo here in the very brightly coloured 720S comes around the final turn to take P11. Rudy Philmalter ahead there in the Audi R8, crossing the line. Absolute stinker of a race again for Rudy. Got caught out in lap 1, I believe, in an incident, but has kept going, and stuck it out towards the end. So always great to see, as I keep saying, from these guys here. Thomas Jack, again, another guy, has fallen foul of drive-throughs a couple of times, and the 276 Mercedes weaving its way across the line to be the penultimate car to finish. And Xavier Rimbold here in the 54 coming across the line to round out the race, Jesse. What an absolute race that was. That was great from start to finish.
Well, we talked about when we started, what kind of race were we going to get? Was it going to be a crash fest? Was it going to be a back and forth race? Well, luckily for us and the stewards, we got a back and forth race, and it was fantastic to watch. There wasn't a battle for the win in the end. Savalainen was just that more special. Joe McCauley, though, did everything they needed to do, securing the championship lead for another week. And man, some excellent battles. Verstappen did make that pit strategy work, even after having the tires nuked in the battle with Allen as well. My goodness, what a race we saw for all of the top 10 place positions. I don't know if we did do the other thing, though. I don't know if we knocked out a championship competitor today. I do know in the top 5 it will be a bit further to go for some that had a less than perfect finish today. Joe McCauley doing just an excellent job. He's not winning the battle, as they say, John, but he is winning the war.
Certainly is. Joe McCauley playing the long game in this championship. We didn't see him last week out at Alton Park, so that will be, of course, his drop round on the board already. But yeah, just blown absolutely wide open tonight. We've had Savalainen take the pole and romp away from it from the start. Joe McCauley in very close contention at the beginning, but just didn't have it towards the end. Grantas Caracas, again, with some fantastic pace that we did see from him from the beginning. Ivanov in the Bentley, 5-second penalty, but still stuck it to the back of Caracas towards the end. Albin Bouquet with a much better run in P5, and Merles in P6 coming back into the championship again after a rotten round at Alton Park. But we do have a guest just joined the booth, just knocked on the window and signalled her in. It is, of course, Honora Rose, who finished in P7 in the 56 BMW M4 GT3. Honora, how do you feel that race went for you? Seems we have a few technical difficulties, possibly with Honora's mic at the moment. If we can work those out. But Honora Rose with some great battles between
Yeah, I'm
Merles and
here.
Bouquet. There we go. We've sorted
Hey.
Honora's mic out. How did you feel that race went, Honora?
Well, I was essentially out after lap 2, that contact. We knew it was going to be difficult because of the weather. It was essentially in the middle of a heat wave. The BMW is pretty bad on tires, so add 2 and 2, and yeah, what you get. Yeah, after that contact, I essentially lost the rear end of the car. It wasn't sticking anymore. Essentially lost all the pace I had. At the pit, I repaired the damage, hoping it would make it better. It did, but the car wasn't the same anyway, so couldn't get to my pace either in the second stint. So
It's certainly super tricky. Speaking from a driver's point of view, having been in your shoes before, tangled up in an opening lap incident, and then the car just doesn't quite feel connected again. And even though you've pitted and repaired it, it's still very hard to get yourself in that mindset again of, I know I can do this pace, but the car just isn't giving it to me right now. So is there anything special you do to try and overcome that, or do you just try and grit your teeth and try and extract all the pace that the car does have in that moment?
you just really grit your teeth. Really, I'd say you drive like you're used to. Maybe the car doesn't quite react, so you adjust for the next lap and you hope for the best. Kind of like driving in the wet, really. Just constantly adapting.
Yeah, certainly so. And adapting is what you do have to do with any damage of any kind. And especially in these hot conditions, adapting is definitely something you need to do from maybe being practicing in, cooler conditions. I think the car has a little bit more longevity and suddenly, half an hour into a race, it doesn't. But Jesse Lee, any questions for our first guest?
Yeah, Nora, just an excellent defense after that to not give up and to continue in those circumstances. And I told you I've got to see you in a completely different light, and that's on the defensive in the past season or so here on the Friday Champ. And it was such a high last week with the win, the fastest lap, and all that. And now you find yourself in a slight bit of a hole. We're going to your home in 1 week's time. We're going to Paul Ricard. What's the prognosis or the early anticipation for that race?
I'm hoping it's not this kind of weather for sure. That'd be nice for the car. Other than that, we're really gonna struggle on that straight. The car has no top speed whatsoever, and that straight is not helping.
Well, we definitely look forward to seeing what you can do in 1 week's time on your home soil. John?
See you next week.
Yeah, see you next week, Honora. Thank you very much indeed. You've been a great driver as always, and fingers crossed home soil weather is a little bit kinder to you, but at least you're not in the Porsche next week. That's what you got to think about. You're not in the slowest car.
True.
You've still got a little bit of top speed left in you yet.
True. Thank you.
Shots fired by John Dalton.
Luckily, no Porsche driver in the booth tonight. But we do have another driver with us. Joshua Allen from Ballers Esports finished in P8 after a fantastic fight with Christopher Streppen in the Bentley. So yeah, how are you doing, Joshua? How did you find it trying to get past Christoph?
Hard. It was a really nice battle, but yeah, it was hard. I had a slight contact with him, and then I didn't expect. It felt like netcode, but I don't think it was. It was my fault for sure. But luckily for me, he saved the car, and we could carry on battling as well. It was good fun.
Yeah, certainly great to see good respect between drivers up and down the grid. We did see it at the beginning of the race with Ivanov tangling with another driver. And again, they waited for each other and gave each other a load of respect. But speaking to Verstappen and reading some messages, he didn't actually plan to not take tyres, Jesse. Can you believe?
I absolutely cannot believe that. Joshua, I have a question for you, and I've been thinking about this for a while. You got by Verstappen, you got repassed, you got by him again. Were you having fun battling Verstappen, or was it frustrating knowing that you had the pace to be in front all along?
It was fun, but frustrating at the same time, because as Arnaud was saying, the BMW is horrible on tyres. Even when you switch in these 30-minute stints, it's horrible. And basically the car, at the start of the stint, the car was perfect. I had my wheel actually had no force feedback, so I went straight, and then it regained feedback again, which was so weird. So I was annoyed about that. I was like, oh no. I sent it a bit too hard. But yeah, I eventually got past him. It was a risky move, but we both left each other space, and it was really fun.
Certainly wonderful to hear from your point there, Joshua. Sadly, about the hardware troubles, something does plague us all eventually at some point in our careers. But yeah, good to hear that you did get it back on track and keep going. So I think that is all we've got time for tonight. I'm being given the hurry up symbol through the window from the director. So I'd just like to say a quick thank you to our partners here at RCI, racedepartment.com, your source for sim racing news and mods. AK Informatica for providing our server solutions at RCI. Driver61.com. You can get 25% off your driver coaching by using our discount code. There's a link in the description below, sorry, I've completely lost my point. Link in the description below by going to driver61.com. Fanatec, one of our great partners here, your one-stop shop for the best sim racing equipment. We do have an affiliate link down in the description, and it won't cost you a penny, but it does help us with all the running costs here at RCI. And finally, a big shout out to Sim Racing GP if you're frustrated of public lobbies. Join simracing.gp for quality community-based sim racing today, and it's also completely free. We love everything free. So from a pole to a win, Savalainen has been our victor tonight, blowing the championship wide open once again. So you can join us next week on Friday from Paul Ricard in France for round 5. From myself, John Dalton, and my co-commentator Jesse Lee, this has been RCI Friday GT Sprint Challenge. Good night.